Good evening. I'll go ahead and call to order the February 6th, 2025 workshop meeting for Downers Grove Park District. Start with the roll call first.
Mr. Bender, Mr. Dahlstrom, Mr. Kutula,
Here.
Mr. Lunt,
Here.
Ms. McDonald. Here.
We all can start with. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any changes?
We do not.
Don't have any commissioners that request participating.
We do not this evening.
We're on the communications. We have any, nobody's.
No online visitors.
Then I guess we go on to our first discussion item for a workshop meeting tonight, which is the Adventure Falls discussion.
I apologize if I am a little off. I'm battling some illness, so I'm sorry. Awesome. So everything that's gonna be talked about is in the this awesome packet that was put together. So there's nothing new that I'm talking about tonight that isn't already in here. Just want to start by highlighting a couple of the survey results. So I think overall what we got back was very positive. People were happy with the way the summer went, the way things worked out. Yes, there were comments and things that we need to improve upon. And I think some of those comments were things that we were already talking about and discussing heading into next year anyways. So I'm excited to take what the survey told us, take what staff saw, and kind of combine those two things and move into next summer better than we did this past summer. One thing I want to point out on this is the staff satisfaction, the friendliness of the staff. So obviously that got very high regards. I sent out invites back to staff that were with us last summer in mid-December. I gave them till the end of January to tell me if they wanted to come back or not. Nothing like binding, but just trying to get some ideas of what our hiring needs are going to be heading into the spring. Last year we had 32 staff, 23 are returning. 3 assistant managers are coming back out of the 5 we had last year. And then we're promoting 2 cashier attendants into the assistant manager role. So I'm very, very happy with the amount of staff that are going to come back. 1, because they did a good job. 2, it'll make training a lot easier for us heading into the season. But then the couple of staff that we'll bring on, they're going to have people to lean on when they have questions, day to day. If I'm not there to answer them, or an assistant manager is helping a customer, we're going to have people who know the operation, who know what to expect. And when we're making these tweaks, they're going to understand the tweaks we're making because they saw it last summer. So I'm very pleased about that. A couple other things I just wanted to point out was the value of the season pass. I think that's a great number, great regard. People, thought it was a good value, which I think is good to see. And then I thought this was important because it just kind of shows us how people are getting the information. One of our goals is just kind of hit pass holders a little bit earlier in terms of communication. So this just shows me, how do we do that? Is it through the website? Is it through that word of mouth? The guide, stuff like that. So kind of how we can communicate with them, tell them about our changes that we're making to 2025 to get them prepared for the season ahead. So And then just some interests that we had surveyed people on. Again, this is in that report of some things that we're gonna try to do next summer. So some special events during hours, some special events during off hours are things that we are planning on doing. As well as the pavilion rentals, the private rentals, really pushing those more through marketing, through word of mouth, so that we can boost those up. Because I think I mentioned in our last meeting, we didn't do a whole lot of marketing of the rentals, just because there was a lot of things that we just didn't necessarily know what to expect. So I think that's kind of a low hanging fruit of something that we can improve upon and do better heading into next summer. So it's good to see that people are interested in that just heading into next year anyways. And then, are you interested in purchasing a pass again? You know, over 70% saying yes, I think is awesome too. So it shows that people want to come back and do it again next year. This is in that packet as well, but this was kind of our high level financial results. So kind of what we took was we broke the operation down into the 4 categories. Obviously, the spray park being one, the mini golf, concessions, and then the park in general. So our revenues are kind of self-explanatory. Obviously, our food costs and our drink costs are going under concessions, the rentals, the admissions, the passes is all right there. And then in terms of expenses, salaries we broke out like Adventure Falls salaries into these 3 categories, and then part-time maintenance salaries into the park salaries. Education and training hits on like this 471, that was for me to go through pool operator training, a cost we don't have to do again. That training is good for 5 years. So all of us that have it don't have to go through it again next season. As well as the food handlers training that off the top of my head, I think is good for 5 years too. So that 23 staff that's coming back, they don't have to go through that training again. It's just a couple of new staff that we bring on will have to take that, which will cut that cost down. And then putting things in permits and inspections, Department of Health coming to okay us, whether that be the spray ground side or the concession side. So we did our best to try to break out the direct costs into each category just to see what is bringing in money, what is costing money, just to make it a little bit more of a clear picture. And then we went ahead and did some of these indirect expenses too. So indirect salaries, that's like part of my salary going there, part of Josh's salary, Michelle's, Dave K's salary, how much time we're spending down there and helping with operation. Same thing with benefits, and then all the different utilities that are being utilized down at McCollum and Adventure Falls too. So then we go into detail in the packet just about changes, things we saw, things we want to improve upon. All I'm going to do tonight is just kind of summarize the different things that we're going to look to do in 25. So in terms of concessions, we noticed that freeze pops aren't the way to go. They were a low seller. So eliminating those and just transitioning to popsicles, those push-up popsicles, they're cheaper. They're easier to get. You just go over to Walmart and get them there. And it's just one less thing we have to order. The freeze pops, eliminating the fudge bars, same thing, just a item that didn't sell a lot. Not necessary to keep it. We have other options for people to buy in terms of ice cream and popsicles and stuff like that. Freshly popped popcorn wasn't super popular, very hard to maintain the machine, wasteful, because at the end of the day, obviously we're throwing the popcorn out. So just moving on to prepackaged popcorn, and if that's an option that people still want, but we're eliminating waste and doing our best to keep our staff time costs down too, because putting that machine would take somebody 20 to 30 minutes per night to make sure it's wiped down real well. And then using our sales data from this year to adjust order quantities. One, at the end of the season, just to make sure that we don't have extra product. And also, I think it's okay to realizing that it's okay mid-season if we run out of barbecue chips for a week, we can push people to regular Lay's for a couple of days until our next order comes in. So not keeping so much extra product on our shelf in inventory. We're going to implement a spreadsheet system just to track waste, expiring product, just to keep a better handle of rotating product in and out, and making sure that we're using the product that is going to expire first compared to the product that we just got and not messing that up as much. And then partnering with the golf club to help combine orders if we need to through Cisco, but then just kind of utilize the same paper products as well, silverware, plates, napkins, just so that we don't have to do our own order on that stuff. Because sometimes those are the things that maybe cost a little bit more money than you'd like them to. In terms of the spray ground and mini golf operation, so we're going to be doing that new check-in window with the larger design, similar to the mini golf window. It's going to help us a ton just in terms of customer service, allowing people to flow through lines easier. Honestly, just like communicating with the customer is going to just be 100x better, which I'm really excited about. And I think staff are too. I think that was just a frustration for them, was having to bend down on that little window to try to talk to people. So just being open, more customer friendly is going to be great. Like I kind of talked about earlier, trying to sell season passes a little bit earlier, so we can communicate with those pass holders, again, to just communicate some of these changes so that everybody's on the same page. So on day one, we're ready to rock and roll. We're going to go ahead and reduce weekday staff from 5 to 4, especially during those, non-peak times that we really don't need that extra person. Obviously, if we start to realize that like Wednesday afternoons are just the busiest time, that might be a time where we maybe bring back that extra person. But for the most part during the week, especially as we head into the afternoons, we did not need that extra person. So that's just an easy cut that we can make heading into next year. Lowering the resident child daily admission to $2 to match that adult resident rate. And then lowering the non-resident fee from 10 for a child, and then to 4 for an adult. And then what we are going to try to do too is each season pass holder that renews, we'd like to give them 5 free passes that they can share with people not in their household. So what that kind of looks like is last year we had these guys. So this was for day pass for the spray ground and then our round of golf. So I'm envisioning getting like a third one that's maybe orange, that we know that that's what we gave to pass holders. This one's a bad example because it went to the library, but I went ahead and numbered all of these last season. So I have a spreadsheet where I tracked, okay, I gave numbers 5,298 to 5,398 to Dawn. So when somebody redeemed it, I knew that Dawn was the one that gave that out, and that pass was off the market and couldn't be redeemed again. And then what we would do, staff would collect these, and then I would just turn them in with my deposit, if that makes sense, so that it was just out of circulation and never had to be out there again. So that would be how we would, track that. Each family would be, assigned numbers. It would all just be in that spreadsheet so that we knew that, the Patton household had numbers 1 through 5, and when 1 through 5 were redeemed, they'd be in that spreadsheet, then not back in circulation. Some other things that we're looking to do is we'd like to provide that discounted daily admission rate to the McCollum Pavilion renters. So giving them that same rate as somebody who rented the pavilion inside Adventure Falls. So dropping that down to that $2 just to keep it consistent with that resident rate. And kind of how I envision this going is, in my perfect world, if somebody is booking the McCollum Pavilion online, I would hope that we could figure out a way maybe to prepay for a certain amount of $2 passes. So when they come with their rental, they have their printout, hey, I prepaid for 25 people. Awesome, let's get you the 25 wristbands. But I have 5 more, no problem. We'll get you the 5 more wristbands, just pay right now at the door type of thing. So the thing I always think about is somebody's gonna come and they're gonna say, well, I only have 20 people, but I paid for 25. What does that look like? What we've done in the past too is like giving people those free passes so that they could come back another time. To do our best not to refund them the money, to try to just get them to come back a different day or give them out to their friends or things like that. Lowering that cost of the private rental, the after hours private rental from 500 to 400. Just to entice more groups, who want to potentially do it, just brings it down a little bit. I think clears a hurdle for some people, some groups. And then closing at 6 instead of 7. Just our data shows that from 6 to 7, we weren't busy. So eliminating that hour, cutting the staff costs, just kind of making things more efficient operationally. But then the feedback for private rentals that I got last summer, and granted, it wasn't, a lot of them, but it was maybe less so the 500 and more so the timing of it. Like 7 to 9 is just a little bit too late for groups compared to like a 6 to 8 o'clock. So we're hoping to, again, utilize that as an opportunity to build those private rentals and to build that up. So then some customer enhancements, adding the Plinko type of game at the 18th hole, just to engage with our guests, to make things a little bit more fun and enjoyable at the end of the round. We'll continue to manage the umbrella usage while hoping and planning for 2025 to have that shade canopy, which will be great. Lowering the resident child daily admission to $2 to match the adult rate. And then reducing the non-resident fee to $10 for children and $4 for adults. And again, providing the season pass holders who renew those 5 guest passes that they can give out to anybody not in their household that they would like to. Like I said earlier, introducing new and different special events. Halfway to Christmas, mini masters, splash and watch, just some ideas that were thrown around. Those would be during hours of operation, after hours of operation, just kind of doing a little bit of everything just to see what people want, what people like, what timing works best for people, especially I know summertime is crazy for everybody. So trying to figure out what works best for them. And then like I just talked about, lowering that private rental cost from 500 to 400, and then offering that discounted admission rate to McCollum Pavilion rentals, since that was something that a big question we got a lot last season. So then at the next meeting, hoping to get final consensus on these following recommendations. So lowering the resident child season pass rate to $5, just to make things even, streamline things, match the adult rate. Lowering the resident child daily admission to $2 to match the adult rate. Lowering the non-resident daily admission to $10 per child and $4 per adult. Offering those 5 free daily admission passes to pass holders to pass out to individuals outside their household. Lowering that cost of the after hours private rental to $400. And then offering that discounted daily rate to McCollum Picnic Pavilion renters as well.
Well, first of all, thank you. I know you're under the weather. Appreciate it. Really good report, very thorough. Hats off. I mean, there's a lot of information, data in here. And I want to thank you that it's tough to come up with a projection with only 1 year data, understood. But the staff did a great job in this report. And again, I know I appreciate it. Of those recommendations, the question I had is which one is staff? Is there a particular one staff is recommending out of all the 6 options, or is there?
All of them.
Okay,
Short answer.
no, that's fine. It's a good answer. Like, is there? The other question I have is that would it be advantageous to reach out to the schools and maybe give a pass or two if you have perfect attendance or if you're on a valedictorian, or would that be something that would be worthwhile, not worthwhile? I mean, if I know the school districts, the Sox and Cubs used to do that. Would that be worthwhile maybe considering this year?
Yeah, I'm all for that. I've had, I think like one PTA group reach out to me about getting some passes. And Dawn and I communicate about that stuff, but
Give quite a bit to the PTOs.
yeah,
No, I didn't know. That's why I was
Yeah,
wondering
no.
if it would be good, but yeah, good job.
I'm all for like, yeah, helping community groups out. And we work with the library, so they have their summer reading program. So they use the passes as like a prize.
Yeah, they used to give out little tokens.
Yep.
Yeah. Reading books, yeah.
Yeah.
Part of the answer to your question on the recommendations, staff really took the input that we heard from the board at the last time we had the presentation, as well as the information from the surveys. And then just looking at the overall performance and what staff had saw, and that's really how the recommendations came to be. And then for tonight, we just thought we'd bring that back to you for discussion. Again, at the end of it's not something you would vote on, but we would look for consensus either tonight or at the next meeting is fine as well. Once we have consensus, and we'll start advertising how we're going to operate for the year.
Yeah, one of the questions that I had in reading this, I love the idea of the giving some sort of discounted rate or bulk rate for people using the pavilion. Makes the pavilion more attractive to use. Maybe, I think we do all right with rentals there, but makes it more attractive to use. But I was kind of in my head trying to think what the logistics of that would look like. How would we make sure that the people who got the passes were part of the group that rented the pavilion? That seems like a difficult thing to track.
Yeah, I think how I'm envisioning it happening is similar to when people rented the pavilion inside Adventure Falls. So like people would come and they would be like, hey, I'm here for the vendor party. Okay, awesome. Like we know that we're expecting about 25 people. So we have kind of 25 wristbands ready to go for that party. So then as people come and check in, say they're with that group, we give them the wristbands. Eventually we run out, we talk to the host, hey, are you expecting more? Or wristbands were left over, are you expecting less? And then just have constant communication with the party host. It's kind of how I envision that going too with the McCollum renter as well.
Okay, so I was unaware that we use wristbands. So we would give the children or adults associated with that party wristbands, and then know that they can go in and out all day. They don't have a pass. Okay.
And earlier he had said that they could prepay for them, and then if additional guests show up, that we could then offer them the same price for that and just give them, hey, here's 5 more for the $10.
Yeah, because would it be limited? It would just be everybody in the group have access to that, or would they tell us we need 25 wristbands or we need 75 wristbands or?
Yeah, it would be like I wouldn't expect them to pay for everybody in their party because I'm sure there's going to be people that don't wander over there.
Yeah.
I would probably cap it at like 50. That's just a number I'm throwing out in my head. I'm not set on that, but you'd only have up to 50 people that would be able to purchase that discounted rate for.
And you see the charge being a per wristband charge, or like here's the price for 25, here's the price for 50, just to make it a little easier to manage?
I would just do per wristband. I think at $2 per wristband, I don't know if it's worth trying to do.
Well, I mean, because I could foresee that getting complicated, because it's like, hey, do you want to go? Do you want to go? And if it's just $2, if it's like $25, here's 25 wristbands. Give them to anybody you want to give them to, or at this price, you get 50 wristbands. Here's 50 wristbands. You hand them out. I was just trying to administratively, you never know which kids are going to go over there, or which adults are going to go over there. to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one thing too that we get sometimes like, and that's the hard part about prepaying is because I know every weekend we're gonna have a group that says, well, I don't have 25, I only have 20. So can I get my $10 back type of thing? So just trying to like limit that, I guess, too. Because even if we sell it as a package, they're still gonna be like, well, I don't have 25 people. Why do I have to pay for 25 people type of thing? In the one summer we had, it seemed like people were more willing to pay per person, like a la carte, than have like a group rate for X amount of people, if that makes sense.
Well, I understand it works for them, but did it work for us? But like handing out all those wristbands, talking about the concession lines being slow, and I'm sorry if you talked about that, and I missed that earlier. It just seems like a thing that takes up staff time, takes up this, and at $2 per, it's like if somebody ends up buying 8 more wristbands than they need, the worst thing in the world didn't happen. But if you think administratively, it's not hard for us to give a la carte wristbands. Obviously, you're there operating. I was just wondering.
Yeah,
Considered.
I tasked like my assistant managers to really have like, be in charge of the parties. And so they were able to kind of like step out of the stand, take care of the wristbands, take care of checking the people in. So I think it's manageable. I think that would be a good thing to look at, like if it ends up being too much. Like we pivoted on how we handled rentals last summer mid-season. So I'm not afraid to pivot on something mid-season too if we find out it's not working or if it's giving us trouble.
Because I'm just wondering if the pavilion inside the spray ground works differently than the pavilion that's way over there. Pavilion that's way over there, somebody comes a little bit later because they're partying all day long, right? It's not like the party starts at noon and everybody's there at noon.
Right.
But not obviously a big deal. Just wondering if packages. And the free 5 admission passes, is that something that's on a person's card, or is that they have like a punch card that they bring in and that's how we?
Yeah, so we had these last year. So it's just a free day pass and then a free round. So I would get like a third color, and then that's what I would use I'd give 5 of these to everybody that redeems their season pass.
Okay, so they're trying, so it's not even a punch card, it's just we take the card.
They're numerical, he records the numbers and then.
And I have a spreadsheet. So it'd be linked to, like, the number would be linked to the household that got them.
That's interesting. So I get 5. I have nobody to bring, so I give them to my brother. He can't use them because now those 5 free are only registered in my household.
No, he can. It would just, when they're redeemed, it would just be redeemed under your name.
It's more of record to see who's redeeming them.
Okay.
And how many?
It's not saying you can't use them, those are your 5. or
It's
your
more
5.
for our
It's
records.
for our records
Yeah.
of, okay, the Bender household,
And then I can go,
3 of their 5, you know what I mean?
While none of our passes, with golf or gift certificates we give out have quote unquote cash value, we still account for them as if they do have cash value, so everything is numbered and tracked. And on this situation, we don't care who redeems them, but we want to track how many we sent out and how many came back, just from an accounting standpoint.
But we don't need the address to do that, though. I mean,
We do not. No, we're just tracking the actual physical document.
right. I mean, we're tracking we're tracking both how many we get redeemed and who
Right.
is the one who are redeeming them.
Right.
Whose account were they redeemed?
Who's accounting were they from? Yeah, is that important information? How do you plan to use it?
I was gonna say the bigger deal was, so I gave these out to staff. So like I gave Josh 20, I gave Dave 20, I gave Dawn 20. And so for me, it was just like, who's abusing it, right? Who's giving out all their 20 and who's not giving out? So then I can say, hey, Josh, like cool it with the free passes. Like, so it was more for that reason,
Yeah.
but just using the same spreadsheet for when the households redeem their passes.
I'm just trying to, if I think of ways to make things more efficient, if we got to write down addresses every time. For information that doesn't seem that valuable to me.
It's a number.
Like,
No,
It's
we
a
give
number.
We give out rounds of golf to
This is all it would say.
PTOs and different
And it would
things
just
like
be-
that. It's always interesting and good for us to know how many of those came back and where they came from.
Because in a system somewhere it shows that Brett Bender has 5928 or whatever.
Yep, I have a spreadsheet that lists all that.
Is that how you keep track of resident in district rates too?
What do you mean?
Is there an out of district rate for the passes as opposed to an in-district rate?
For season passes, no,
No.
no,
We
non-residents
didn't
can't purchase
sell.
those.
Only residents.
No. And you had mentioned you were gonna, with your deposits, it's clip the cards to that.
Yeah, yeah.
Explain
So
that.
when we do deposit, like the staff, they put it in their drawer, and then when they do the deposit, they put it in the deposit bag, and then that card is out of circulation.
You would use them for the following. year, though. Dog year.
And I just have a question on, the survey, it's, you know, where it says, how would you rate the value of the season pass price compared to your overall experience? And 87.37 people said they thought it was a good value. So what was the impetus for lowering the price?
I think that was part of what staff took away from the discussion we had with the board the last time, that there was a desire to reduce some of those rates.
Okay.
So that's where we took a look at that. Staff looked at a whole bunch of different scenarios on how to make that work. We also then folded in what we were hearing, that with the non-resident rate being higher, which is something we took away from the board, that was okay. But we were hearing from our residents that was a pressure point for them, because they wanted to bring non-residents with them, and that was the pricing point. So that's why we did that, the pass rate, to try to address that.
I will tell you, I'd be interested in hearing out what everyone else thinks about that, but I was surprised that there was a price reduction also, and I picked up the same on the set value of the season pass compared to the overall experience of 87.67%. It was just right. So I don't know why we need to reduce. I thought original considerations back when this was all being built, I thought were that these were going to be a lot higher than they ended up being last year. And I kind of viewed last year as a introductory offer for the first season. And then maybe I'm not looking to go as high as maybe something were presented originally, but I don't know that they needed to go down though either. So. I mean, look, we're talking about the family of five always, a family of five to go to a theater and movie to see Dogman and Downers Grove, for example. I mean, it's like the same price as the entire season pass. The only difference is you see one movie compared to being able to come the rest of the season go splash.
And of course, back when a much higher fee was pitched, you know, that fee wasn't pitched when we were voting on the bonds. The fee was never mentioned in the running up to the spray ground. I mean, you compare the gear of the spray ground to going to a movie. I compare it to going to the McCollum Park, which is free all year, you know. So the fact that there was like a fee at all was, I was surprised when that amount, I was taken aback. But understood that you got to offset the price of the, you know, making the IDs here. Offset the price of making the ID, you know, help offset a little bit of the price of the staff, but it was really hoping that this was a nice free benefit like any of the parks that we offer. To the residents, that they could come and I was, you know, okay at the, what was it, 5 and 10 last year, and now we're talking to 2 and 5. You know, I was fine. I would love to see it be free. I could see that if we're going to charge, we might as well charge 5 and 10. You know, so I mean, if you're going to be going down to 2 and 5, why are we even charging at all?
How many season passes did we sell last year? I know it's in here, but.
I have a,
Oh, and it was like 4,971. Actually,
give or take one or two.
Actually, I texted Dave this a couple days ago, so.
It's 2,783.
Okay, sorry.
That's total passes, you know, grand total,
That's adult and children.
correct, combined.
You know, I was one of the ones that promoted the fee decrease for a number of different reasons. Accessibility, you know, I mean, we've had an uptick, I believe, in people looking for the assistance program, and you know, we offer a lot of benefits. But I believe that accessibility, if we can take down some of the economic blockades, it may not seem like a lot of money, but I'm sure that there are residents of our village that is a lot of money. And I don't mind lowering a bit. I'm inclined, I know we have a fiduciary responsibility with the bonds being out there, but I'm inclined to make it free. Personally, I think in some respects it should be free. But I'm a proponent of lowering the fees, and I want it to be accessible to a greater number of people in our community. And again, you know, it's subjective what one calls rich, but what may be rich to one person may not be to another. And I think that lowering the fees allows a broader base of our community to take part in it. And that's to answer your question, Bill, or you know, I mean, for Bob, I think that I'm in favor of lowering it, and almost, you know, as Brett had said, I'd be in favor of having it free. But again, that's just my opinion. And like I said, I did receive some, not a lot, unscientific, but there was some feedback from a couple of constituents that were concerned about the fees. I brought them to the board and just relaying what some of the feedback at different events took place. Again, unscientific, there isn't a poll or anything else like that, but you know, I was at a social event, I mentioned that at the meeting where one of the discussions was the fees. So again, just answering your question.
That the fees last year accounted for $40,000, which is, you know, not an insignificant amount of money. I think we will do better with the rentals this year. Going, you know, we only got 4,500 from that last year, but 7 p.m. is very late. And, you know, I think the $400 to $500 makes a difference in a lot of people's determination, and lowering the price, you get more people coming in. So hopefully any sort of loss of that $40,000 from admissions fees is, you know, made up for by rentals. But you know, what Bill had argued when we were talking about the fees before is the fear of the park getting overwhelmed, right?
True.
Having some sort of gating on there, and I forgot now. Spray ground in Westmont, does that have fees?
Yes.
Right, spray ground in Oak Park, or Oak Brook certainly has fees. That's not a fair comparison.
That's part of their pool, so, yeah.
Yes. Trying to think of what other towns have spray grounds around, like
Playground in Lyle is free.
That's free.
That's
That's
Glen Ellen
sensible.
charges. Glen Ellen charges. And there was a third one. On a blank.
Tend to be the larger ones, like
Glen Ellen.
and the Lyles is
I can picture it. Can't think of it. Was what? No, I don't think Wheaton has a spray ground. Let me find that.
He said, well,
I remembered I had asked.
It's around here.
About paying for it, and you said you didn't hear any
yeah, you didn't get any.
complaints about people being like, I should be able to just use this, I live here.
No, the biggest complaints we got in terms of price was from the non-residents. That it was too expensive.
Yeah.
I think that was one of my comments of concern of lowering the non-resident rate. While they're not happy with it, particularly with the location that it's at, it's very accessible to large population of non-residents. And then the concern has always been that non-residents are overwhelming the accessibility for residents who paid to put it in place. I think that's why we thought we had a little more, or we could do a little more flexibility with the pricing on the residents. And if we misread the board, and I apologize, but that's what we took away from it. But we were really concerned about the non-resident rate, because we think, and I still believe there's a consequence there of just having too many people there. And I think you're hearing them complain because they want to come and use our stuff. And we've actually gotten some feedback of, oh, you don't want non-residents, do you? Your price is too high. Oh, kinda, it's for our residents.
Yeah, and if you remove the fee entirely, there is no means of managing.
Correct.
No.
If residents get in or not, but the counterpoint to that is when we saw the numbers for, hourly use rates, we really weren't coming close to 200 at any point.
We did. We also strategically did not, because we didn't know what to expect. We didn't do a lot of marketing. Don has a lot more marketing. As soon as we get final direction as to what we're doing at fees, we're gonna start marketing across the board to bring those numbers up.
Because what is capacity?
Are we 200?
200.
And so average.
We have plans in place actually to give people taking their phone numbers and put them on a wait list. Because we didn't know what we were gonna get. So we were preparing for 400 people showing up at one time. So
Oh.
we actually strategically downplayed it until we knew what was going on and what kind of crowds we can expect.
Correct me if I'm wrong, the 200 also includes all the grassy area and all of that.
That is correct.
200, it's
It's
inside the
not
fence.
just,
I think 200 is a little tight in there, to be honest with you. Yeah.
We had the days, like, I would say, like, our high points were averaging between like 75 to 115. And when you had 115, it looked packed. So I can't even imagine what 200 would look like.
That's the legal capacity.
Right.
I mean, if we start experiencing that,
Yeah.
and we're like, that's a bad experience for everybody, we may want to drop that.
I was able to find, just so the board knows, the other one that charges that I was referring to, it's actually the Elmhurst Park District. And then New Lenox, that's not close to us, but they also charge as well. So those are the ones, again, for 25, if they change, we don't know that, but the one I was trying to think of was Elmhurst. So
I have no problem in keeping the non-district resident rate the same, but lowering the in-district resident rate. I mean, for the taxpayers and, that already and essentially are somewhat subsidizing it, but I definitely would keep the non-resident rate the same and entertain an idea of lowering just the in-district rate. I don't know how anybody else feels, or just.
I will say one thing, if you look at the survey feedback, and granted it's, there's only 190 responses, so it's not speaking of everybody, but we had probably upwards of 20 to 25 comments saying that the non-resident fee was too high, to the point like they couldn't even bring their Woodridge families with them to the splash pad. And so I looked at that and I just felt like it's not, how do I say this? It's not about like non-resident and resident. It's helping our families, allow them to bring who they want to bring and that not be a barrier too, if that makes sense. I understand the point of wanting this to be for the residents, but I think the residents are also speaking to us saying that they want to bring their non-resident friends, and they weren't able to do that last summer.
Where I think you got really creative with the passes,
Yeah,
allowing them
Yeah.
to bring anybody, so that they had a non-resident.
I mean, doesn't the 5 free passes sort of alleviate that? It's like a.
in theory.
And how many of those folks that are non-residents you think are like grandparents who like the area? Like come spend a day, or do you think it's mostly friends?
I think it's that. I think it's like sisters and brothers who have kids too. Like if my sister lived in Naperville, I wouldn't want to bring her because they'd have to pay $15 for a kid and $10 for an adult. Or we could just go to Cypress Cove for the same price and enjoy a water park.
And that is an option if they want to do that.
Sure.
To clarify. It's just some.
Actually, I know somebody just,
So if
grandparent is a resident. It was my understanding they could bring grandchildren and go in as long as they had a pass at the resident rate.
That's correct.
Right.
The children don't have an ID to check. They absolutely,
Household and down.
they could be with their grandparents.
That may be something you may wanna.
Mow it a little bit more or clarify a little bit more because there's probably a lot of grandparents saying, oh, I can't afford to do my grandkids.
I do also want to point out, we also offered a caregiver
Yep.
pass as well last year that we would continue as well, which I think helps the residents.
Yeah, for sure.
And I am all about making things accessible. Just curious what what the logic was, and the thought process was, if people are saying this is good, and then we lower it. I understand, like kind of bringing it to the middle. So if you lower resident rates, it makes it a little easier to bring non-residents. But then,
Yeah, again, that was what I think staff took away as where the board was looking from that discussion. Was a desire to lower those rates. So that's where we went back and we looked at those, added in the staff's perspective on some of the non-resident barrier from participating with the resident and looked at that as well. Just trying to balance all that. So that was the thought process. I
so
mean,
then the big question is like the revenue that comes in, the 40,000. Is that significant enough to look at like, yes, we want this, we don't need this, it's a drop in the bucket compared to what this costs, so we're really okay without it. I mean, once you have a full year under your belt of how much it costs to run.
It's difficult because it's been 1 year. We don't know what the impact of dropping the rates will be. We could drop the rates, it could double the number of people and it evens out. On the other hand, it could stay the same. And then we're finding $15,000 from somewhere else in the budget to make up for that. So then we would adjust the budget, so to say, to try to fund this still at the full amount.
And I think lowering the rates, getting back to my other point, was part of our vision and part of our mission statement, and part of, trying to knock down some economic barriers so that our in-district residents can enjoy some of the programs that we have to offer was one of the reasons why I'm supportive of lowering the in-district rates. If we're gonna have that policy, if we're gonna have that vision, then I think this is one of the ways. We can't do it across the board, obviously. Maybe we don't do it in this instance. But this was one of the ways that I thought, keeping in line with what we had set out as our culture for the district moving forward. And again, it's just my opinion.
Also with your question, is the dollar amount significant? No. I wouldn't say that. When we talk about rec revenues as a general speak, when we increase rec revenues 3% for the year or something, those dollars are much more. And those do have a larger impact on the budget. When we talk solo, it does become finding the dollars. Like I said, it's not anything that's going to impact our quality. Whereas if we said, okay, let's lower programming 10% across the board, that could impact quality.
40,000 still 40,000.
It is, but if it's not.
No, if we felt it was gonna be detrimental to the operation and or the district, we would bring that back to you and say, this is what we're hearing, but this is our concern with that. So I think we've been able to make that work.
Every little bit helps, but it is the directive of the board and the value that the board wants to bring forward with the operation.
Well, losing the entire 40,000 if we went to the 5 and 2.
Right.
Right.
Probably in the neighborhood
It's,
of 20,000, let's assume more than 2,700
We
families.
have that calculation. Trish helped you.
On page 11 of the report, it would be, if we stick with these recommendations based on the 2024 participation numbers, if you will, it would be about a $15,000 impact.
And then that's assuming roughly the same number of signups.
Correct. It's all based off of the 2024 data because
That's all we have.
really no.
That's all. Yeah, maybe there's only 2,700 families that will ever send it to this. I tend to think that maybe there were some families last year who didn't hear about it to the middle of the summer and they're like, well, forget about it now, but next year.
Right.
If I know at the end of the summer, now I know it's there. I'm anticipating 2,700 to go up. I'm also anticipating the 4,500 on the rentals to go up.
The other
It's not
part,
part of the 40,000.
the other part of it, I think that what Carter has found out in the rec staff is it tends to be the younger families the most that are taking advantage of it. You're not seeing the 12 to 13-year-olds as much. You're seeing the younger families. And speaking with the schools, they've done some studies and they do see a lot of younger families. So that does have a positive impact on us if they seek to choose this experience.
Sure.
We check the American Community Survey data for how many families.
I'm not sure. I have some talks with some of the school districts to give us some of that information.
It's a wonderful website that the school districts use. You can really roll it up. Yeah, I guess I'm torn on this because like I do want it to be free, but I get the argument for a fee of sorts. And I don't feel like there's a lot of families and I've gone up here and said a lot of stuff about we got to make stuff cheaper because forget that there's a lot of people who live in this town that don't have giant houses. And I don't know if there's like a one person who's like, $5, I can't do that. $2, I can't. Like, I don't think that price is going to be the make or break point for anybody making the decision to sign up for this program. And $40,000 isn't nothing. And we're really, I'm sorry, we're really talking $15,000 because that's $15,000 isn't nothing. So I wish I had a
Well,
firmer answer. I mean, I would always.
This would
I'd
be
love
our
it to
second
zero.
year. You know, actually, this could be a good point, going back to what you were saying. So this could be our second year. We could see what we have our first year of data at this rate, collect our second year of data at a lower rate, and then compare the two.
So the one thing I would caution with that is when
Go
you
ahead.
lower it, it becomes an expectation. So if we were to keep it the current price and do the more marketing, do the more programming, that would probably be a better set of data to compare. I'm not saying we can't do it that way.
No, I got you.
But when you do lower the price, as soon as you lower the price, that's what they'll expect. And to
And
bring
to
it
get
back
more
up,
people.
they're gonna then say, why are you increasing our rates?
But we increased rates in this budget year we had some
For other stuff, yes.
For other stuff. I'd like to have at least this, in my personal opinion, have this at least reduced for the constituents. You're right, and Brett, I agree with you that this isn't a make or break, but it's still putting money back in people's pockets, which I'm in favor of. So I would have a tendency to, if you're asking for it, I'd like to see the reduction, but keep the non-district status quo. That's just my opinion.
And then you know, where it is, or are you even advocating for raising it?
I'm literally just asking. But, no, I'm not advocating for raising it at all. I'm just, because it makes sense to have, in order to keep track of people attending, in order to keep the numbers down, it makes sense to have a few. Because that just seems like an easier way to run the facility as opposed to, not being able to keep track of who our households are, blah, blah, blah. If people aren't saying that it's too high, but we also have, maybe 2,000 families, agreed to this price point, and 2,000 families didn't because it was too high. You might find that we lower it, and we attract another attendance in the place. We want to be. So, it's like bringing guests from other communities is expensive. Yes. Lowering that maybe by a bit makes sense. But I can also, certainly it will be hard to determine if the marketing, et cetera, is what brings the numbers up. Or if it's the decreased price, but. Again, as I said, I'm always about things being accessible. But I think the price point it's at now. Well, it seems to be accessible for one group, do we know? So we don't. So.
Yeah, I'm okay with going. I like we talked about, I don't think it's that really that big a difference from one year to this next year. I'd probably be fine, even lowering the non-resident rate as well to the way to what's been proposed. Let's keep up portion of it.
And the non-residents, they can't even get the annual pass.
No,
Right. So they're paying that $10,
Every
$4
time they come.
every time they come. So that's the one, I said earlier, I think going resident pass, dropping it a little bit doesn't make or break decision. But the out of town resident, out of town, that might make a difference in whether they come more.
Right.
And that can actually result in an increased revenue in the end.
And they can't come as we're still proposing
still-
they will not be able to come until later.
Which that was really.
10 to 1.
And we didn't get about that as much. Why people saying like, I want to come with they just said it's too expensive to bring my out of town friends. They didn't say, and I can't bring my out of town friends in the middle of the day. You didn't see that one as much.
Yeah. Maybe once or twice, but.
So just so you know, in 24, we had a little over 525 non-residents paid the daily fee for the whole summer. So
Child or adult.
child or adult, that's combined was about a little over 500 that actually paid the daily fee. So not many.
And $10 still that's more expensive than a movie. It's been a while since I've been to a movie.
It's about $40 for a movie.
But so
Well, no, 46.50. Depends, but weekdays 30.
$46.50 for a movie?
For family of 4.
All right.
Buy it online.
So we're under the price of a movie, is what we're saying. For fun summer, yeah, I mean, yeah, ultimately, so. I guess I'm falling onto the everything you've recommended on the board after all that discussion. Is I feel like there's a chance that we could bring in more non-residents. Try it out, because if next year we raise the fees on the non-residents,
I understand.
if we find out that this, we have a 525 number to work for. Next year, that's 750, it's like. Yeah, we do, if we end up going that way, so.
I like the option. What the staff recommended, I think it'd be a good thing.
So what we're hearing at this point, the board is comfortable with these options?
I personally, I like it.
Okay, so then we won't bring it back in 2 weeks. We'll just go.
Sounds good.
Appreciate the discussion, and I really want to thank the staff. They put a ton of effort in this. Our team, marketing team put together, finance. There was a lot of brain power that went into trying to bring this together, so.
No, it shows, Bill. Good job.
Yeah, report is very thorough. Hold on.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I missed the first part of this. Are we only talking about these things right now, or are we talking about anything else in the report?
We can talk about anything else in the report. The only thing that we needed direction from the board was what the fee structure was going to be. Everything else we can manage, right? So if there's other questions, we'll certainly entertain.
But Eric got my earful yesterday. So should know what some of this is coming. I really do appreciate the concession breakdown. And we asked for that and it's probably a lot of work to put together. But I do find it helpful. And, you know, one of the things I think I brought up last time was wanting to look at, you know, what items are we making money on? And one of the things that I've seen in the stuff I'm learning about retail, sort of working in the retail world, you know, with the complaint on the concession stand lines being long, which can, you know, inhibit revenue because people see that line and then say, I was gonna buy a hot dog, which is an amazing margin, but I'm not gonna buy the hot dog because that line's too long, right? So we don't want long lines, and one of the biggest effects on whether a line is long or not at a concession stand is how many options people have. Not so much the food prep time, but people go up there, they see all of these options. And now they're sitting there making a decision for 5 minutes instead of just boom this, boom that, boom this. So I see that we are, you know, taking away the freeze pops or we're taking away the popsicles. Yeah, it's freeze pops. We're taking away the fudge bars. Switching up the popcorn, which you know is a big time saver, but I still feel like there's more pairing that could be done. And one of the items that I had seen, I mean, the Dippin' Dots. You know, a lot ordered, but not a good margin item. So, but the ice cream cup, arguably the same thing.
Not to kids.
Is it not? And I'm lactose intolerant, so like probably.
I think Dippin' Dots are disgusting, but the kids.
The kids love
The
that.
kids, it's just.
It's the.
That's all my
Carter, why don't
fun
you-
thought.
That's why there's so many ordered, even though it's bad margin item.
Correct,
Yeah.
because it's all ages of children. I mean, my high school will still pick Dippin' Dots over an ice cream cup, an ice cream sandwich, a fudge bar. Dippin' Dots is really where it's at when it comes to that ice cream.
I'll never understand that.
Yeah, my 3-year-old's the same way. They grew up with that stuff.
It's the ice cream of the future.
I see it a lot, like the future has.
I'll be honest with you, I think when it comes seriously to Dippin' Dots, it's not something that you can buy in the everyday grocery store. So when kids see that, they truly see that as a novelty that they can only get at a concession stand or a sporting event facility or something like that. So it's unique in where it's offered, where you can purchase it.
So why do we offer the ice cream cup? Is it that different that some?
Well, I think because I, as the parent, will get the. I think the kid wanted the Dippin' Dot, and I think the Dippin' Dot is kind of like a lot. We're making money on it, but it's like the loss leader.
And it's the value.
Go up
It is
there
the
and then
loss-
get
it's
something.
not the loss leader.
I think it's also the
later.
value because it's $2.
Yeah.
So you can get 5 of them for $10 and spend 2 Dippin' Dots.
Okay. Thank you for explaining it. To somebody who can't eat dairy. Okay, so the other margin item to look at here, I mean, I'm guessing the nacho chips and cheese comes with a cheese cup that's the same as the cheese cup that only has a 14% margin, right? Or is the cheese cup something different from nachos and cheese? Again, can't eat cheese, don't know.
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing, so it's just part of that. And are we just trying to keep everything on the menu below $5? Because it's like a nice round number.
No, not necessarily. And one thing that I had thought about, I actually went to a session at conference about concession stands and food and beverage. And one of the ideas that the gentleman presenting talked about, like combo meals. So some of our more popular items, like the pretzel, like the hot dog, like the nacho with cheese, like kind of bolding that out as a combo item to maybe tack on an extra $1 or $2 that you get the soft drink with. Because the soft drink is something that it's a high margin item. So it doesn't cost us a lot, but it feels like they're getting a better value when they're ordering the combo meal. And just kind of call that out on the menu so that instead of just buying the nacho with cheese, they get the combo nacho.
Yeah.
Which essentially is the same cost, but we're charging an extra $1 or $2.
Right. And I like the meal idea, but it feels like the I think the nachos could go for $6 though, but they're not, they're also not that popular. Right, 197, everybody seems to buy a cheese cup with it, because are people buying cheese cups for the pretzel?
Yep.
Is that what you do with cheese?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the, a little less than half the people who are getting a pretzel or getting a cheese cup with it. But the nachos, for being at a 39% margin. Only 197 ordered. That to me looks like and now instead of people choosing between the nachos and hot dog when they want something a little more substantive. Okay, the hot dog is the thing I can get that's considered. What else can? Gotta offer Gatorade, you gotta offer water. Well, should we offer Gatorade? I mean, I know we're gonna talk later about it, but it's a high sugar. And Gatorade is just not available to the, what you call it, Fountain Creek.
No, it doesn't. They don't offer that.
I will say, I'm only gonna order 2 flavors of Gatorade this summer. I tried to be a little bit too aggressive last summer. Like the green and the orange, we're only gonna offer red and blue. Those were the 2 that sold most.
Okay, so that's one decision that we're taking away from people. They have 2 decisions on the Gatorade. Take one, take the other.
And the Gatorade and the water are the only bottle options. Everything else is from the fountain.
Although cucumber lime is obviously the best flavor, but I don't think it's very popular. All right, barbecue chips, regular chips. I see, because we don't really track those individually, so we don't really know how many people are ordering barbecue chips versus regular chips versus Fritos.
Right.
I feel like Fritos aren't that popular.
And that was one thing I think you might have bid out. But not being stressed, like if we run out of Fritos, like just accepting that we're out of Fritos for a week. And then when I make the next order, replenishing it, then not keeping extra stock of chips because some of them don't go as quickly too. So like if we run out of Fritos in the middle of the week, just like forcing people to choose anything but Fritos.
Cross it off the menu.
Yeah.
Do they offer, when we buy those, are they all multi-packs where you have a variety in the box?
No, it's individual.
It's individual?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. Think about getting rid of the nachos, doesn't seem like it's very helpful. Would we drive more people to the 78% margin hot dogs or the 81% margin pretzels?
Do you think you could raise nachos a buck?
Yeah.
And that would drive up the profit margin.
Yeah. And I think too, like
7 people ordered it.
we're gonna have to see what Cisco is gonna charge us too. Like, I think there's a good chance that some of those items we order are gonna go up a little bit from last year, so we're gonna have to adjust our prices to just stay in line with our market as well.
So I mean, to make it worth it, do we have to outprice it so much that we don't even want it on our menu? Or, we do it like the lobster places. Do you put the $75 lobster on the menu so the $50 steak doesn't look like it's like too much? So you just put that $6 nachos up there and people are like, $4 for a hot dog, great.
But if
You
you
know.
don't eat beef.
That's what the soft pretzels for.
The Dippin' Dots are for.
Stack the nachos. And by the way, I like that.
That is the challenge with the concessions.
Right. why
There's
not
small
farm?
margins and
Right,
there's like concession staples, those all kind of being one of those. But I don't know, it's hard.
right, but why not throw pizza in there?
Well, I've done that too. I think part of the things that he's got on the menu here are lower waste stuff. Like, and then controlling the hot dogs and not, knowing not to make so many towards the end of the day, that helps with that. Because the real cost is the waste side. Pizzas are notorious for that because someone wants a slice of pizza, and what do? They put the whole pizza on the thing, and the next thing you know, you're not throwing out the fact you're eating pizza at the end of the day. And so that's why you want to look at some of these things that we can control waste. Nachos are easy to control that because we're not throwing anything out at the end of the day. So some of those things are wonderful to have, but it's the waste side, it's controlling the inventory that gets to be an issue. That's where your popcorn is. I think having the prepackaged is great. We've now eliminated not only the labor on that, but we've eliminated all the waste and the time that it takes to make the popcorn and put it in the bag and to serve it. Those are time consuming. That slows stuff down. So I think the bag is much easier.
And for the, I mean, have we considered doing vending machines to not even make people come to the concession window for a lot of items?
We've talked about that a little bit. They would have to be inside a building because they would like to be vandalized if they were outside.
It
I
worked.
can't remember, there's like an overhang, right, of the building, so you could
So you
put them
could,
there
yeah.
and then have a metal
So
thing that closes down at the end of the night.
let me talk a little bit more about that because that conversation came up today. I had spoken with all of you, thank you, for the conversation. One of the questions that Commissioner Lund had was, what would be the break even for the concession stand? Because as you all saw, we did not break even there. And I can tell you from 10 years, it has been difficult to break even at any concession stand. So we talked a little bit, what's the goals there? Is it a profit? Is it a break even? Is it an amenity that's just there for the public? And in talking about that, we did some calculations on our side of what we'd need to achieve in the next couple of years as we grow this operation to break even. Now, if we chose in the next 2 to 3 years that, hey, the concession stand isn't working, that's the route we want to go. Just a tad bit of talk started happening today of, okay, well, how could we pivot? Would it be having one less person in that building that maybe can still hand out candy bars or chips, but having some vending machines? Trish, I'm gonna put you on the spot. You calculated the numbers a little bit on that break even.
Yeah.
Can you talk just a bit about that?
Yeah, so depending on, I am looking at, in case you want to reference page 4 of the actual, report that was in board packet. So if you're looking under the concessions column and you're focusing on the direct expenses tied to concessions, which you can see those direct expenses totaled just over $43,000. From a simplistic viewpoint, if we take that $43,000 and we were open 77 days this year, and we do the simple math, it's about $550 rounding in revenue that we would need to bring in from the concession stand to just offset that 43,000 of direct expenses
Each day on average.
on average.
$500.
Yes. Now, if you look to the top and you can see the revenue number, we brought in 13,500. When you take that dollar amount and divide it by the number of days that we were open, our average sales were about $175 per day. So you can see that's a pretty big gap that we have to make up. Now, obviously, as we get years under our belt, next year we're making improvements, staffing changes, lowering some of those costs. That will naturally help to narrow that gap. Now, at what point could it be a break even? I don't know. We just have to wait and see how the improvements and the efficiencies contribute to the dollar and cents here.
So the reason I bring that up is it's going to take 2 to 3 years to really establish that concessions for what it is. After this year, we might even want to talk about adding other items in there. And maybe it's not food items, maybe it's a t-shirt, maybe it's a hat, whatever, to try to drive that value up. But if you don't have the concessions, I do think that people are going to watch some kind of food out there. That natural option would become the concession stands. I'm sorry, the vending machines along that area that you could close or something like that.
Well, I mean, I think that the two work together, because again, people see a line, they're not gonna go there, so we don't know how much revenue we lost this year because there was lines. And one of the ideas that we had in here for solving that problem was the bigger window that's easier to talk through, so it looks like we're already planning on doing a little construction there, so how hard would it be to add a little bump out on the outside of the building, just big enough for the vending machine? And then what the great thing about the vending machine is nobody's in line just to get the popcorn, nobody's in line just to get the chips. they can go over there and get that, and people want the hot dog, who want the hot pretzel. You know, maybe with a shorter line there, now we can add, you know, when I think pizzas, I don't think pizza by the slice, I think of little frozen
Yeah.
pan pizzas that you like microwave up, like, can we offer some of that stuff because people aren't tied up? You know, I mean, I like the fountain thing, like
Let
the
me
fountain drink.
test this. If we could go through the season, see where we're at, evaluate it. Cause it's our reconstruction of our surge tank, because we don't have the permits yet. We're still working on the contract with WT. Attorneys are fighting back and forth. We're gonna get there. It's just language. It's gonna be in the fall. So we're gonna be tearing up that concrete in those areas in the fall anyway. So if that's something we want to do, that would be the optimal time for us to do construction and put that in, and then we'll have another year ourselves.
And then maybe if there are hours that are low on concessions, we just close.
We close it and
So we have
have that.
Yeah, because we see vending machines, that's just closing down at night, but I think freeing up the people, what are we staffing like concessions with 3 people? 2 people?
3, right?
Well, they rotate.
They
Rotate.
So next year, we're gonna have 4 total people in the stand.
Because some of them are doing mini golf too, right?
Yep, mini golf, spring.
That's the same staff that does mini golf, right? So you gotta consider rotation. I was wondering if there's one still there because nobody's handing out Lay's potato chips. You know, the Lay's potato chips hang up themselves. You know, and if we're selling the hot cheese for the pretzel, if there's tortilla chips in a bag, somebody go to the concession, get the tortilla chips. If they want to dip it in there, we're not losing the nachos. But we're changing the margin on what it is that we're getting out of selling the nachos.
And that could, but that be a potential better option for us, because in the past, we've allowed other people to put vending, but with us having food there anyways, we'd be able to stock it ourselves, so we would make a better margin on that than hiring it out.
Yeah, and you just make sure it's far enough window that the lines aren't on top of each other, but then we're not paying people to hand stuff out. It's just collecting it, but again, understanding the vandalism, we're not gonna leave those things out.
Right. You
Unguarded. No.
definitely remember that. We used to have vending machines over by the softball concession stand. And that's exactly what happened. They got destroyed.
Yeah.
So if you had to lock them up, then it takes that out of the mix. So you're right. You're correct on that.
Paul, who's on Zoom is, because he has COVID. Sure, his construction head is going, oh my, how am I gonna do that?
And just out of curiosity, when we're talking lines, like how deep a line are we talking? Talking 5 people, 10 people, when you're saying long concession lines? Is it really like is that a consideration, or is that like okay, there's gonna be lines, because there's other people here?
I think, like my opinion is it was our first year, and I know that's the excuse that we keep saying, but I think now that we're gonna change the windows, 23 staff are coming back that were with us last summer. They understand the expectations and kind of how the ebb and flow of the lines and the day goes. I think what we have planned for checking people in is going to make those lines go faster. And I think a training point that I'm looking forward to presenting as we start the season is making those concessions more efficient. And how the assistant manager can help more in the certain times when it is busier to just fill up drinks, to pass out chips. So something I'm looking forward to is the challenge of eliminating because I think it is something that we can, do better at. And so I think my brain, when we're doing this presentation, when we're putting this together, is training, making sure staff are now, we have a season under our belt. You know that on Saturday at 2 p.m., there's going to be 5 people waiting in line for concessions. So how can we be more efficient, making the pretzels, getting the chips, filling in drinks?
Would you say that is a bad line, 5 people?
Yeah. Yeah.
That it probably doesn't go much more than the 5 people or.
Have a certain tolerance for lines.
Right.
You go to a busy place, you will stand in line, so.
Yeah, I would say 5. I don't really remember a line being, the concessions being more than 10 people. But I could be remembering incorrectly. And some of those busy weekend days, sure, you get your rushes and things like that too. So
Well, would there be any possibility like on a weekend, I don't know, Friday, Saturday or Sunday? If financially, it's not advantageous, the concession stand. I mean, could we do what we do for concert nights and maybe have a food truck in there or something? As an option? Or not really? It's
Probably not.
Probably not worth there.
Financially for them, it's not.
fine, it's not advantageous.
On the
Okay.
weekends especially, they're looking for the events and the breweries probably.
Okay, no, fair enough. It was just a question.
I could just see a future in which the Gatorades, bottles of water, chips and candy bars, are taken up by the vending machine, thus enabling us to actually offer a greater diversity of cooked food, prepared food items in the concession, because this is not just the spray ground, right? This is pickleballers saying, well, what can I get after pickleball? And I don't know if people finish pickleball and say, I want a hot dog.
Even the baseball.
Yeah.
Kids playing baseball.
I have seen people coming and going for pickleball that have bought concessions.
Put some energy bars in there, put some Gatorades in there. No, we can definitely explore that.
But
Yep.
yeah, if the building's locked. Vending machine, so that's, I'll add in concessions. Anybody else have any questions? I've got questions on expenses now. I wanted to understand page 4 better.
Okay,
But I think Kevin's gonna be the star of this show, but.
well, we'll see about that.
All right, stop there. Because I had a lot of questions about this, because I understand this is what the, revenues and expenses of 2024. Trying to get an idea of, are these expenses that we anticipate year in, year out? Is this what it's always gonna cost to operate Adventure Falls? And so some numbers did jump out to me. The $55,000 for maintenance and repair at the mini golf course. That cost that much to,
That, Kevin, was that the?
Turf.
That was the
That was
turf,
the-
the turf in the
greens.
in the
We did the
upgrades.
greens.
okay, so that is like, is most of that.
So that's a one-time cost.
That's not gonna be.
No, and that was also what you don't see necessarily on that cost of the turf was also covered by the golf fund. We completed an interfund transfer from the golf fund to the recreation fund to offset that cost.
Right, and I do remember that, I should bring it up, but we're reporting it here as if this is like Adventure Falls.
So this
Yeah,
is
it was
everything that took place for the year out by McCollum Park. Not necessarily general park supplies that may have been used out there, because Parks doesn't track those necessarily in great detail by park, if that makes sense, right? So if they spend $25,000 in mulch and they spread it to various parks, that cost wouldn't be shown here. That's just shown in our regular, a different parks account. So what's shown here is the cost that went to spray ground, concessions, minor mics. So it could be continuous costs that we would see in the foreseeable future, such as the salary and wages, obviously the cost of the food. But there's also those one-time costs, like you just pointed out, like those green things that are also in here. So I'll let you continue with it.
Yeah,
So if we look at our total loss in the year, for Adventure Falls is 134,000. Let's move that to 80,000 right away, right? Indirect, I'm not looking at the total number, 234,000, right? So, okay, so 55,000.
If you're backing out that one-time green.
One time thing, I'm trying to get to the sense.
Yes.
There is some improvements we're gonna do this year.
Well, like the window would be a one-time cost for this year.
I mean, on mini golf, we still had,
well, that's.
we had not invested in that for a very long time.
Didn't we
Push that to 20.
It was
We pushed that
the fall, it was the grass
Back.
Pushed it back for this year.
for this year, okay.
That was the fencing.
The fence, we pushed that.
Yeah, we push that back to 26.
And we're not, for the Oslad McCollum project, that's not gonna heavily involve the mini golf course.
No, the only thing that it would involve Adventure Falls is those umbrella area. We
Shades.
included some sunshades with the thought again, that if we're out there doing all that work, it makes sense to include that.
And then So I asked Eric about this too. When we see park on here. Are we just talking about like the play set? Is this 14,900 what we got from the pavilion?
So that 14,900 in revenue, that's from the McCullum Park Pavilion,
The picnic pavilion.
picnic pavilion. That's what that rental income is from.
Okay, and the $18,000 in maintenance repair on park. Is that picking up wood chips?
So that's a combination of things that is different small equipment that was purchased when we remodeled the core building, so it could be used as office space. Some of the small equipment purchases went there. We added lighting for cameras at the pickleball and tennis courts. The umbrellas that by the concession area, they were coded here. So some of them were one-time expenses, right? Because we're not going to do necessarily that lighting again. The umbrellas, we might have to buy more this year until the shade structures come in with the OSLAD grant. But that is what's making up that line item.
We wouldn't need to buy again.
The small equipment, no, we wouldn't necessarily be buying. It was office chairs, things like that, just to get that core building habitable for Carter to work out of.
Right, but operating supplies, that's paper, pens.
Actually, those operating supplies, what's classified there was the signage. So different signage that marketing put together.
Signs that are replacing, but it wouldn't be that level of.
I think we had 2 large ones come out of there this year.
And the signs that we have out there will last us maybe 4 years, so they will have to be replaced.
So it's not an annual cost, but it is something of a.
Correct.
You're always gonna have operating supplies and MR&R there, so this stuff will change each year. But typically, when you're starting up, those are all higher.
And there were some unbudgeted items that were in there, like the lighted sign out by 67th Street that we upgraded and things like that. So I think some of that is in there as well. So there are some one-time items in there for sure.
Which, and I think all this is important to the fee thing too, like look at Adventure Falls, plus if we start getting some racquetball income in. But gonna offset a lot of this stuff too, so that's, we got one time. We've got 0 time revenue right now, but maybe future there is revenue and we break that out. Did we, with all the problems that we had out there with the tanks? Are some costs because, people had to work overtime or that are attributed to any numbers here?
Go ahead.
So under the indirect expenses area, you'll see the indirect salaries amount under parks, and it's roughly $37,000. So that number was calculated, and it's based on looking at the 4-month period from May 1st through September 1st. And we chose May 1st because staff was getting the spray ground prepared to open and get up and running. So for that 4-month period, we zoned in on 4 specific parks employees of Kevin's. And then from there, Kevin was like, Dave worked 65% of his time out at McCullum. 2 other gentlemen worked 50% each, and then somebody else worked 7.5%. And we did a simple math based on those percentages against their 4-month gross wages for that period of time to come up with that. Now, Kevin can speak to how he feels those percentages may decrease next year based on what they learned this year.
So I think a lot of it was just learning the system and then getting a process down for just, between cleaning up the spray ground, dialing in the chemicals. We had a lot of issues with some of the solenoids. There were times where, they were out there right at 7 a.m. and there was probably 6 or 8 solenoids that were clogged. So we had to pull all that apart. And so I think we were able to figure out So last year, it was a lot of learning. And I think, you know, Dave Kozlowski, he had experience with that as previous district, so he spent a lot of time with park staff to get them up to speed with kind of the operation of the spray ground. And it was everything from, like I said, the mechanicals to the, you know, the tipping bucket to the, you know, all the nozzles in the ground and things like that. I mean, just starting it up for the first probably month or two, there was a lot of little things that came up where, you know, but I think we got it to a point now where that number will go down significantly. There was a lot of learning going on there, that's for sure. A lot of training, a lot of learning.
So. Okay, and it looks like for staff, you just looked at how much we spent on staff total, divided it by 4 and put it into spray ground.
Well, it's just coincidental that parks number of 22,000 is very similar to the other 3
Oh, I
columns.
didn't even look at that close. Yeah, okay.
But that parks column, it's really strictly parks, and it's consists of 2 seasonal employees that works out at McCollum. So they may have done tasks at the spray ground, minor mics, concessions, but they also could have done tasks out at the ball fields. So they don't track their hours all the way down to the task per se. So it's just lumped in under this part-time salaries.
So.
But it was seasonal employees.
Were the other 3 things easier to track because those kind of employees are kind of clumped pretty much? They work in that.
The other
Yes.
columns, yes, that was just because the part-time staff was on that rotation, so they'd work their shift, but they would rotate from minor mics to concessions to spray ground, all within that shift.
They all go to one code.
Yeah, so that would.
Regardless of what they're doing, it's just one code. So then you then divided them out.
That one's easy enough to figure out. I didn't even realize that the part-time, I saw the first 3. But a lot of those are parks costs that without spray grounds, without Adventure Falls.
Yeah.
They could still be being incurred.
Those are expenses that we incur every year, so they're not like new because of winter.
Some of them, some of them, some are not.
I think if you allocated it to strictly to the spray ground, then, you know, if we could figure that part out, then that would be the only, I guess, additional cost, because we'd still be doing, you know, cleaning up mini golf, you know, in the whole general area of Adventure Falls.
So the one thing you did,
Right,
Pickleball and tennis, blowing those past every day. I mean,
the one thing you did tell me separately was we've always had high standards for McCollum. We've increased them even greater because of the usage. The usage wouldn't have necessarily been there without the pickleball courts and the splash pad. An example of some of the decisions we made, we wanted a green space, we wanted the mulch, we wanted that all nice, which includes additional weeding, it includes additional blowing, that kind of stuff. So it is hard delineating when you're getting down to that fine detail of how much is new, which there was some, and how much was old, which, like Trish said, the baseball fields are old. Those have been there forever.
And of course, there's more people coming through there, I'm sure. I mean, with the spray, and is the water bill on here too?
Yeah, so
An operating cost of the spray ground?
the spray ground under the utilities, that 16,000. 11, I would say 11,500 of that 16,000 under column 1 for the spray ground is related to water. The rest of it would be electricity and gas and sanitary.
Which, you know, and it's also the bathrooms there, right?
Correct.
And the hard thing with the utilities too is, I think part of the reason it's indirect and stuff too, is it also includes watering and various things that are very hard to determine.
Yeah, so we tried to split.
It's on a similar.
Irrigation
Yeah.
in the Adventure Falls.
The irrigation is split out under parks. Basically, however, where the meters fall, so there might be meters like at the concession building, there might be a meter out by core. That was how we divvied up where the utilities fell, like which column they fell in. So if there's something out at core that the village bills us for, that's under the parks column. If there's something, you know, if the meter is by the spray ground and the concession, that's how
And the mini golf.
that number, yeah.
So that, yeah, that's 1 meter that right there, that's right out of the concession stand there. So there is irrigation in the spray ground area as well. So that's part of that watering as well.
And then we don't have any pickleball revenue reported here. Did we make money at Big Deal?
So we did not report pickleball here because we didn't show programming.
Okay.
This is only we were trying to zone in just on the spray ground, minor mics, the concessions for this report. So we didn't capture anything from a programming standpoint because we also have outdoor volleyball that goes on there and maybe some different
And
outdoor
soccer.
like
Lesson.
athletic camps and lessons. So the programming aspect is not built into this report.
And those courts are probably 90 to 95% free. They're free usage just for the general public.
Yeah, but we hope to be making revenue.
Yeah. Josh, you ran lessons out there, right? Pickleball lessons at McCollum or what? Yeah.
No, this year we did not. We plan to do it in 2020.
The lessons were here.
The lessons were in.
Right. So going forward, yes, but in
We
24,
were unsure about usage sort of thing, so we played cautious. Now that we have a better idea that it's very busy in the evenings and we have some daytime, the goal is to fill outdoor lessons.
And we will go from 1 to 2 tournaments this year with our partnership with the Sports Commission. Now, those aren't big dollars, but there will be some dollars coming.
It could also affect session.
Which could also affect the concession, and hopefully we, you know, I know this year we're gonna split, but in the future, as we discussed at the meeting, hopefully. Yeah, we get paid for those sports, gets a higher percentage, so I guess that what I was trying to get down to. We don't expect to lose $234,000 on Adventure Falls every year. A lot of these one-time expenses, a lot of new revenues that could be coming up.
What we're working towards is reducing the expense side while increasing the revenues.
A lot of the improvements we're making themselves are efficiencies that should save time and dollars. Kind of like yes, it's a cost right now, but hopefully it's an efficiency in the future because it's easier to operate.
Sure.
And particularly on the mini golf side and the park side. Things hadn't been maintained as well as I think they should have been over a number of years. So with all those amenities opening up, there was a huge push to get us back to where we needed to be. So there was some additional costs incurred in those. There was a lot of time spent with looking at just mulching and replacing flower beds because they had just turned into weeds, eliminating some, putting in new grass because it was just dirt and between the parking lot area, trimming those trees. I'm sure I'm missing a bunch of stuff.
waterfall.
Yeah.
The waterfall.
Waterfall.
There was just a lot of things that needed attention that we pushed to the surface.
I think we're gonna find new efficiencies too, and I think Brett, you brought up a good idea on the phone with me about looking at how mulch is being handled out there and all that, and we can get some numbers on that in the future to see, hey, if we did replace the mulch with something else, what would the cost be? What would the man hours saved be? And would that be advantageous or not? So those are things we can continue to look at as we go into this season and into the budget season.
Yeah, and that's something initially we had discussed when it was being designed was if we could put, you know, artificial turf in there, but the IDPH wouldn't let us do that. So yeah, just by the spray ground, because it made sense, but they don't allow it. So but we will start looking at different options and trying to figure out some things out there for sure.
But switching to the turf at the park area. Fairly save a bunch.
Yeah, for sure.
Labor time especially.
They're blowing those weed chips every single
day,
and they're raking those every single day.
Right.
Because of the high usage.
Yeah, so you know, I was hopeful. I mean, I obviously just I really like lowering the fees or knowing the fees on the spray ground that it's going to be a money loser. All parks are, because nobody pays to use them, right? But I wanted to assess if that $204,000 number was going to be able to come down. It sounds like it is gonna be able to come down next year. Thank you for the discussion.
Anything else from
What
it?
was I say before we move on? Because I know we had a lot of questions. We also had a lot of questions on the phone. Is there any questions that we need to follow up on right now? Obviously, a lot of this stuff will be followed up on in future discussions of the budget and of the splash ground. Is there anything that we need to follow up with you in the next couple of weeks about? Anybody?
I'd like to follow up on when we talked about my comment on closing early, which
Yep.
I understand we're doing, and then we'll open up a little bit more for rent.
Carter, you and I talked about that. Can you give that idea a little bit
Yeah.
before we leave?
We threw around the idea of maybe having some nights where we have like family night.
The whole point was, we're talking about cutting everything out, and closing an hour early, which I understand if no one's there for the last hour, but then I thought, well, reading the survey, a lot of people were asking for more hours. If, at least that I read it. And I said, okay, well, maybe keep it at 6, but one night a week, have some kind of special event night of some kind, family nights where working parents can.
I love that, yeah.
Later.
And we're really gonna try our best. I mean, we're gonna make it happen, but since school starts so late for 58, we're gonna stay open during the week to accommodate that until Labor Day when they go back to school. As opposed to this past summer, we closed during the week and we're only open on the weekends. And I think that's where some of that pushback was too, was people wish we would have stayed open during the week until Labor Day instead of just going to weekends only. So.
But your idea actually spiked a conversation, Bob, and instead of maybe it's one day or something and it's permanent. Carter and the rest of the rec team had a great idea of maybe we move it to different days of the week throughout the summer and start with pop-up events, because we don't know how well they'll be attended. We know the numbers have been low, but maybe one week it's on a Wednesday night, we say, okay, we're gonna have a pop-up event from 6 to 8. And that time it can be for families that maybe can't make it out. Maybe the next week or 2 weeks later, we try a Thursday night. So then we can see, hey, is this clicking? Is this working? If it isn't, we can slow down on them. If it is, you can continue each week or every 2 weeks on it. Anything else that
The only other question I had from I think I lost track of this, from the survey was, did the buckets get fixed?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fixed.
Thank you. I like it. Anybody else?
Not at this time.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Moving ahead, the next item is the discussion of a memorandum of understanding. Lyle and Lombard.
And it's just for discussion tonight, we bring for action at the meeting in 2 weeks. I'll turn it over to Dave, who's really the one that handled that.
I'm trying to open mine. Which one were we talking about first? I missed.
Item number 2, the
MOUs, Lyle.
Lyle first, Dave.
Lyle first. So if the board recalls, last year Lyle had approached us, they were shutting down their fitness center. And at that point, we decided to do a 1-year agreement because we weren't sure what the numbers were gonna be. And as it turned out, as we suspected that our residents more than likely got better use of it at the pool. So based on the numbers, we had this is the whole new system. I apologize. Anyway, based on what we saw was that the amount of impact on the fitness center from residents from Lyle was minimal.
I can read the numbers, Dave. We had 152 memberships and 507 individuals that were at the Sea Lion Aquatic Park in Lyle. We had 24 more memberships than 2023. For the Lyle Park District, we had the number in here, I thought 75 residents took advantage of it, with the majority of those being insurance memberships. Our fitness facility.
I think the important number there is for the water park, like you mentioned, was 152, but it was 507 individuals that went to the ballpark, the water park. So again, based on we didn't see an impact on the fitness center, as Eric mentioned, most of those are insurance members, which tend to come earlier in the day. Lyle was happy with the amount of residents they got from us. They were, of course, the revenue too. So in this case, we're recommending that we renew for another year. That way, again, if we do a year, we can, if we do see a spike, we're not tied to a 3-year agreement or longer. We can make it a change if we have to. So this one has proved very beneficial. I know Michelle has had conversations with the Lyle staff and they are pleased as well, and they would like to continue if the board so chooses.
A very timely comment that Dave and I got yesterday. We were meeting with District 58 and one of the high-level managers over there said, thank the managers and the board here because his boys used it over Christmas break. And they loved our facility so much since Lyle closed that they're on him to get a family membership for the future.
I would say that, yeah, the impact to the gym was unbearable. Other than, January, which is terrible in all gyms. It's relatively easy to get on any equipment that I wanted to get on, so. I don't think that we had a detriment to the rec center, by detriment, I mean, over flooding of people. Yeah. Good to do for you.
That's gonna be in our next.
That'll be at the next meeting.
And then, Lombard.
I'll let Michelle handle that because she had direct conversations with their superintendent.
I did. So I oversee the pool pass exchange that we offer every summer. So that's with Lyle, that's with Lombard, and with Butterfield Park District. And in discussing with Lombard, they asked if we would consider letting Lombard residents receive the resident rate at mini golf at Adventure Falls, just mini golf, not the spray ground. As they feel for several years now, since 2018, they've just been offering our residents their resident rate at their pool, but it's not a true exchange. So although they don't anticipate, and we also don't anticipate a lot of Lombard residents driving, it's a 25-minute drive from downtown Lombard to McCollum Park. We don't anticipate it flooding the mini golf course, but they just wanted to be able to offer their residents something and for their board to show that they're trying to offer an exchange and not just on our end. It's not just a one-way exchange. So their board has they're in favor of offering the pool passes to us. But they were just asking if we would allow the mini golf rates.
And we did have 44
We did.
of our residents that actually bought pool passes with Lombard last summer. So again, like Michelle mentioned, we feel that, our residents are going to get much more usage of the passes than somebody who may come play once at the mini golf.
Yeah.
And hopefully buy some concessions.
Cumbersome. I mean, can somebody from Lombard just show up? I mean, can we work it out that somebody from Lombard just shows up and shows an ID and says, yeah, okay.
That's what we're gonna do on our
That's what
end.
you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. They'll just come to the concession stand, like you would check in. They show us their ID. If it says Lombard, we would give them the $5 rate.
Nachos.
Well, if you don't want them buying nachos, steer them away from nachos. I was wondering, are we gonna have a sign there that says like Lombard residents 5 points? Because then somebody comes here from Woodbridge and they're like, why is Lombard get 5 points?
No, we were not going.
It's-
They're gonna advertise on their end
Yeah.
and their guide to their residents. We were not gonna advertise that.
Bob, we're not doing the residency verification like we do with the pool passes.
Right.
This is simply
It's just.
show up and, and honestly, we're expecting a handful.
Next, we're gonna ask about Butterfield Park, but that's a Lombard address, because there's a lot of Lombard, give it to them too.
Yeah. Right,
There's a lot of Lombard that's not Lombard Park District.
right.
It's just unincorporated areas, but we don't.
But again, those residents wouldn't know because they
They won't know.
They won't get it
won't get that
advertised. to them.
publication from the Lombard Park District.
Right.
Question for.
No question.
So we would bring that also to the next meeting for approval as well.
So next then up is the master plan tracking worksheet.
Pull Paul up there for us. Except Paul has COVID, so he is remote. But Paul led the master planning process and working with our consultant, creating a tracking sheet that we plan on a quarterly basis, providing to the board. So that you can see where we are status wise on all the different goals and objectives. And I will turn it over to Paul.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, we just wanted to share with you this worksheet that will allow us to, moving forward, track our progress on master plan action items, the individual action items for the plan. And as Bill mentioned, we are intending to bring this back to the board, hopefully quarterly, to show progress. And then I was going to just real briefly bring up, if I can share my screen. I did share in the memo, there were a couple of charts that we included. The one on the left, these charts are tied to the tracking worksheet. So these will update as we update the tracking worksheet. These charts themselves will continue to update as well. And so the one on the left here is just looking at individual tasks by when they were anticipated to be completed. So if you remember, we had a couple of different categories. Being initial actions would be kind of those items that we thought would be completed in the first, say, 3 years of the plan. Near future then would be kind of like 4 to 6, and then long-term beyond that, and some continuous. So as you can see here, about roughly 30% of the overall items in the master plan were anticipated to be in that first few years. And I would anticipate that as we move through that first few years, some of these might actually shift. We might actually see those get moved into the near future category. So that category might grow as some items tend to shift. And then the other chart here on the right is just showing the percentage of tasks in what stage of completion they're in. So for example, right now, this what we are sharing with the board, the worksheet that we're sharing tonight is showing any work that was started last year through the end of 2024. So just any work that was initiated last year. So as you can see, about 40% of the overall action items from the master plan have some sort of action that's been taking place, so that we have been indicated having some plan in progress, some work that's been initiated on those. And then obviously a lot of them that we haven't started yet. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I'm really appreciative of the sheet. I'm really happy with the work that the whole master plan did. This is a great after thing to have, and I thank you for presenting this.
Yeah, for sure, because now we know where the direction is going to, instead of just lying there in the abyss. It's really good work, Paul. Excellent.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions. I mean, it's pretty much straightforward.
Yep, and obviously, as you'll see on the actual worksheet, it does indicate for each of the action items, there is an individual listed as kind of what we're calling the champion of that each of those action items, that moving forward that will be kind of responsible for moving that particular item forward as we go ahead.
Paul, if I didn't catch it, did you mention how often you'll bring this back to the board?
We're anticipating quarterly.
So Paul feels better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Anything? Okay.
I did have one other quick update if we're done with the master plan topic.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
All right, great. I just wanted to give the board a quick update on the playgrounds for this year. We have the 3 playgrounds that are budgeted for 2025. Last month, we had the request authorization to bid for those playground projects. And as we mentioned at that time, we're kind of splitting out Sterling and Davis Park to put that on kind of like a little bit of an accelerated timeline. And actually get that going and hopefully get that playground replaced in the first half of the summer, so that we would have a new playground there. Our target is by July 4th weekend. And then Fischel Park and Prince Pond would be more of our typical schedule, which is to do those in the fall. For Sterling and Davis, one thing we wanted to mention was just that we're actually looking at having that project go out to bid as early as next week. And that the goal is to bring that back to the board, the bids back to the board at the March 20th board meeting. One thing we'd like to do with that project actually is the playground equipment itself. I think we would like to purchase that directly from the manufacturer. Typically, we have the contractor purchase the playground equipment and it's included in his bid. In this case, we think that we can actually save a little bit of time. And in order to hopefully have a better chance of meeting our kind of accelerated timeline, that if we purchase that equipment directly from the manufacturer, it might just kind of give us a little extra time, speed up that process a little bit. So at that March 20th meeting, we'll have a request to approve a bid for the construction, the installation of it. But then separately, we would have a authorization to purchase the playground equipment from the manufacturer. We're also looking at doing the same thing with the turf play surfacing. With the 2 playgrounds we did last year at Loyan Northside, we were able to purchase the supply and installation of the turf surfacing separately because those companies do the supply and the install. So we'll kind of have those 3 items for approval at the same time at that meeting.
But we're purchasing those through a co-op, and that's why we're not having to put the equipment out for bid.
Correct. Yeah. The larger manufacturers, playground manufacturers, are available to purchase. That we are able to purchase those through cooperative purchasing. I believe the one we're looking at is through Sourcewell.
We had a meeting with the residents of the area.
We did actually for Sterling and Davis. That one, again, we actually had our meeting just earlier this week. We had the neighborhood meeting and a pretty good turnout, actually. We had, I believe 16 neighbors that came, and that's a pretty good turnout for a small park like that, a small, kind of pocket park like that one. We were really happy with that turnout. So.
How many people do we reach out to?
It's in the hundreds. So we send letters out to all neighbors. Well, I guess it might be fewer at this location because we go usually 500 feet out from the park and send it to all the neighbors within that area. I should say it's larger numbers when we're talking about, say, Fischel and some of the more downtown parks, that because you will have like apartment buildings and condo buildings, so those numbers go up quite a bit. But again, yeah, the smaller parks that are like Sterling and Davis, it wouldn't have been quite that many. But yeah, actually that having 16 people turn up and come to the meeting and to look at those is pretty good for a small park like that.
Very good. Thank you, Paul. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Hope you're feeling better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next item is Pepsi contract.
Yes, again, this is something we thought we'd bring for discussion this evening, and it'll be at the next board meeting for approval.
Actually, we'd bring it in April.
Or April.
Yeah. So anyway, as Bill mentioned, the contract is expiring at the end of March. What we did find out from our vendor is in the contract, we have to sell a quota. And we're just a little bit short of that quota right now at the end of March. So it's a standard process with vending is then, so just extend the current contract till we meet that quota. And I said, we're very close. So they told us they're confident based on the numbers that by the end of May, we'll have met that. The reason we didn't meet the quota is because we didn't operate Adventure Falls for 1 year. Actually, a little more than a year because we closed on August 1st to start the construction process. So we're close as it is. So if you add that back in on a normal basis, we'll have no problem meeting the quota. So what we have talked about in the past, before the contract in 2022, at that point, we talked with Bill and we had decided, rather than going out to bid, opening it up, then you have Dr. Pepper, Pepsi and Coke potentially bidding on it. And again, it came down to our desire to not lose the capability of selling Gatorade, which is our number one selling non-alcoholic beverage. If you open it up and let's say you get Coke. Their sport drink, I believe, is Powerade. Dr. Pepper, I don't even know if they have one anymore. But you can see in there for this year alone, we sold over 4,000 bottles of Gatorade. 3,700 of that were at the golf course. And that brought in almost about 12,500. So over a 3-year period, that's 12,000 bottles of Gatorade and $36,000 in revenue. Doubt very highly we'd even come close to that if we were selling Powerade. So that is why our intent is to not go out to bid again, but to re-enter into agreement with Pepsi for another 3 years. And then again, that would allow us to protect our highest selling product. And we've had good service. We've had good relationships with Pepsi, Coke and Dr. Pepper. Coke we're just not big enough for them. That we in the past have had them, but we're spec. Turnaround wasn't very good. The service level wasn't very good. Pepsi, we have very good. Josh can speak to that. He's one that usually deals with our Pepsi vendor. Now Carter's involved. But Josh, you know, same thing. We've had good service levels and
Yeah, absolutely. Great service. Customer service is good. They're timely and they reflect what we need and maintenance of machines as well. So overall, good.
so because the contract would expire in May, Bill, that's why we proposed to bring it to the April meeting, just so it's closer to the actual expiration date of the current contract. So that would be our preference.
CO2 do we put into the soda? Who do we use for CO2?
Pepsi,
They just bring their own.
the tanks, yeah.
Yeah, that's part of they have a subcontractor that supplies them for them, but they deliver it. They might, they take all that.
You intend, I mean, this is gonna be the second renewal of this contract.
Mhm.
You intend on, I mean, I'm okay, but after like 2 renewals, I'd like to see.
We could certainly go out again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just knowing that might,
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Right.
I'm not in favor of,
no, I wouldn't say this is an automatic forever thing.
okay,
It's just right now, it makes sense. And again, anything outdoors is subject to the weather.
sure.
You're gonna have less sales, but no, certainly just like the auditor, we bring that up and switch that up every so often. So long term, no, I don't think this is trying to be viewed as a permanent thing. Certainly, go out again and see what's out there. So.
No, I see the business sense of it, but just for future reference,
Sure.
I'm not
Sure.
automatic renewals of contracts. I understand.
Gatorade at 63.5% of the sports drink market. I don't find much of a difference, but apparently a lot of those.
People it's a name. They just, whether it's good or not, they want Gatorade,
Mike.
And then when Carter said he was gonna not have the green, that's what I want. But the orange and the blue or the light blue, the whatever it is, ice blue, again, it's all choice, but
Blue power.
but they have the name. I mean, that's what people ask for. They want the Gatorade. So, and Ken said that is, they come off the course, they'll grab one of those out of the cooler right away and they're hot. And so he feels the same way. If we didn't have that, he would hear about it.
Which Dr. Pepper, we really hear about it.
Yeah.
You went to Snapple. Switched on. I like learning little facts.
Okay. That'll be in April then? Right, is there a second opportunity for recognition of visitors?
There's no online visitors.
Online, so move on. Do we need a closed session?
We do. And invite the board, myself, Eric and Dave.
We need a motion. Want to say a session?
Mr. President, I move that we move into closed session per the provisions of the Illinois Health statutes. Regulated closed session. You bring up dots, I'm walking
Second.
Second. Moved and seconded by Cindy.
Mr. Lot,
Aye.
Ms. McDonald, Mr. Bender,
Aye.
Mr. Gandula.
Before I do that, can I amend that motion or can you amend your motion to not reconvene?
Yes.
No.
So
Perfect.
amended.
She amended it. Okay. Roll call, or do we need-
Yeah, I did, we're good.